Good morning, Virgo. There's weight settling on someone's chest every time they remember what happened between you. Not dramatic crying or public displays, just this quiet, constant ache that shows up in unexpected moments. When they're washing dishes and suddenly remember your laugh. When they're falling asleep and their mind wanders to how they ruined something that mattered. When they see something that reminds them of you and have to sit with the fact that they don't get to share it with you anymore because of choices they made. Their regret isn't theoretical. It's lived daily in the small ways they've structured their life around your absence. Checking their phone, hoping for a message they know isn't coming. Driving routes that avoid places you might be because seeing you would force them to confront how much they miss you. Keeping things you gave them, even though looking at those things hurts because getting rid of them would hurt worse. Let me show you what's happening in the private emotional reality they're not broadcasting. They replay the moment things went wrong on endless loop. Whatever they did or said that damaged the relationship, they've reviewed it from every angle, trying to understand what they were thinking, why they handled it that way, what they should have done instead, how different everything would be if they could go back and choose differently. That mental replay isn't productive, doesn't change anything, doesn't undo the harm, but they can't stop doing it because their brain keeps trying to find version of events where they don't lose you, keeps searching for the branch point where different choice would have led to different outcome. And the fact that no amount of reviewing changes actual history is torturing them in slow, persistent way. The sadness they're carrying has specific texture, not anger at you, not resentment about how things ended, just pure grief about what they destroyed. And that grief shows up as lack of enthusiasm for things they used to enjoy, as difficulty connecting with new people because everyone gets compared to you and comes up short, as this flatness in their daily experience because nothing feels quite right without you in it. Here's what they're experiencing in their body and daily life. Sleep is disrupted. They lie awake thinking about you, about what they should say if they reach out, about whether reaching out would make things worse, about whether you think about them at all or whether you've moved on completely. And that uncertainty about whether they still matter to you is almost harder than knowing for sure you hate them, because at least hatred is connection, while indifference means they've become irrelevant to you. Appetite is affected. Food doesn't taste right when you're sad. They're eating because they have to, not because they want to. And they've probably lost weight or gained weight depending on whether sadness makes them forget food exists or makes them seek comfort in it. But either way, their relationship with basic self-care has changed because taking care of themselves feels pointless when the person they want to share their life with isn't there anymore. Energy is low, not just physically tired, emotionally depleted. Carrying regret is exhausting because every interaction with other people requires them to perform being fine when they're not fine, to engage with their life when a significant part of their attention is always on what they lost. And that divided focus means they're never fully present anywhere, never fully rested, never fully at peace. They're processing the never meant to hurt you part in complex ways. They know intention doesn't erase impact. Understanding that they didn't deliberately set out to cause you pain doesn't make them feel better, because the outcome is the same regardless of what they meant. And they're grappling with the fact that good intentions aren't sufficient defense against causing real harm. They're trying to understand their own behavior. How did they end up doing something they never meant to do? What in them was broken or scared or selfish that led to hurting you? And that excavation of their own psychology is uncomfortable because it's revealing things about themselves. They don't like seeing their capacity for thoughtlessness, their tendency to prioritize their needs over others' well being, their ability to rationalize harmful choices in the moment. They wish they'd handled it differently, even if the relationship still would have ended. Maybe the ending was inevitable. Maybe you weren't right for each other long term. But they're tormented by how they did it, by the cruelty or cowardice or carelessness of their approach, by the fact that they could have ended things with more grace and chose not to or didn't know how to. The regret includes specific moments they can't forget. Your face when they said the thing that hurt you. Your voice when you were trying to understand why they were doing this. Your silence after they'd done the damage. And those sense memories are more vivid than they want them to be, showing up unbidden to remind them exactly how they made you feel and how they felt watching themselves cause that pain. Here's what they want, but feel they can't have: forgiveness. Not just from you, they need it from themselves too. But they can't forgive themselves until they know how you're doing, whether you're okay, whether what they did caused permanent damage, or whether you've healed. And the fact that they don't have access to that information, that they gave up the right to know how you are when they hurt you, is its own form of punishment. Another chance. They're imagining scenarios where they get to show you they've changed, where they demonstrate through actions that they learned from their mistakes, where you see evidence that the person who hurt you isn't who they are anymore because they've done the work to address whatever caused them to be careless with something precious. But they're not sure they deserve another chance. That's the thing about genuine regret. It includes understanding that consequences are fair, that you have every right to protect yourself from them, that their sadness about losing you doesn't create obligation for you to relieve that sadness by letting them back in, to explain themselves without sounding like they're making excuses. They want you to understand what they were thinking, what they were afraid of, what circumstances contributed to their choice. Not to justify what they did, but to show you that it wasn't about you being insufficient or unlovable, that their failure was about their limitations, not about your worth. The sadness manifests in their relationships with other people. They compare everyone to you. New person is less funny, less understanding, less compatible. And those comparisons aren't fair to new person, but they can't help making them because their reference point for what feels right is you, and nothing else registers the same way. They mention you more than they probably should. Friends are tired of hearing about you, about their regret, about how they wish things had gone differently. But they can't stop talking about it because processing is stuck, because they can't move forward until they've somehow resolved what happened between you, and resolution isn't possible without your participation, which they can't request because they lost access when they caused the harm. They see you everywhere. Not literally, though. Maybe they do catch glimpses of you around town if you live in the same area, but they see things you'd like, hear songs you love, think about you when watching shows you'd recommended, and your presence in their mental life hasn't decreased since you left. If anything, it's increased because now you're idealized memory instead of actual person with normal human complexity. Here's what they're afraid of: that you've completely moved on and don't think about them at all. That would mean they mattered less to you than you mattered to them. And while they want you to be happy, part of them needs to know that losing them affected you, that what you had was real for both of you, even if it ended badly, that you think they're a bad person. They know they did bad thing, but they want you to understand they're not fundamentally bad. And the distinction matters to them, even if it doesn't change your experience of being hurt, because they need to believe they're capable of being better than they were in that moment with you. That it's too late. That even if they figure out how to apologize properly, even if they become person who wouldn't make same mistakes, you've already closed that door permanently. And no amount of growth on their part will matter because you've decided you're done, and that decision is final. That reaching out would hurt you more. They want to apologize, but they're worried that contact from them would feel like violation, would reopen wounds that are healing. So they're paralyzed between wanting to make amends and not wanting to be selfish by prioritizing their need to apologize over your need to not hear from them. What they're learning from this regret, how to be more careful with people. This experience is teaching them painfully that relationships require active care, that you can't be careless with another person's trust and expect to keep it. And whether or not they get another chance with you, this lesson is going to affect how they treat people going forward because they never want to feel this way again. That some mistakes can't be fixed. They're confronting the reality that apology doesn't always lead to reconciliation, that saying sorry doesn't undo harm, and accepting that some consequences are permanent is maturing them in ways that comfortable life never would, teaching them to think before acting because some actions can't be taken back, about their own patterns, why they self-sabotage, why they run when things get real, why they hurt people before they can be hurt. And that self-examination is uncomfortable but necessary if they're going to break cycles that keep them from maintaining healthy connections. That they're capable of loving someone more than they protect themselves. They risked losing you because they prioritized their fear or comfort over your needs. And discovering that they're capable of that kind of selfishness is forcing them to decide what kind of person they want to be, the kind who chooses safety and ends up alone with their regrets, or the kind who chooses vulnerability even when it's scary. Here's what you need to understand about their regret and sadness. It's real. This isn't performance. They're genuinely struggling with what they did and what they lost. And while that doesn't obligate you to do anything with that information, it might matter to you to know that the harm they caused wasn't indifferent, that they're carrying consequences of their choices in ways that confirm what you had mattered to them. It doesn't require your response. Their emotional process is theirs to manage. You don't have to relieve their guilt or sadness. Don't have to accept apology they might offer. Don't have to make them feel better about themselves just because they're finally understanding what they lost. It might lead to changed behavior. Sometimes regret is transformative. Sometimes people actually learn and grow and become different. And while their growth doesn't mean you have to give them another opportunity to be in your life, it might mean something to know that the experience with you taught them how to be better for themselves and for whoever they connect with next. It's not the same as your pain. They're sad about consequences of their choices. You experienced harm from their actions, and those aren't equivalent experiences. Their regret doesn't balance out your hurt, doesn't make things even, doesn't mean you owe them anything. If they reach out to apologize, you get to decide how to respond. You can accept the apology and still maintain boundaries, can acknowledge their regret and still choose not to reconcile, because forgiveness is separate from trust, and you can release resentment for your own peace while still recognizing that someone who hurt you once demonstrated capacity to hurt you again. You can listen without committing. Hearing their explanation doesn't mean you're agreeing to anything. And you're allowed to take time to process whatever they say instead of feeling pressured to respond immediately. You can Set terms if you consider reconnecting. If they want another chance, it's on your terms, with clear agreements, with them demonstrating changed behavior over time, not just promising to be different, but actually proving through sustained different actions that they've addressed whatever caused them to harm you in first place. They're filled with regret. They're sad. They never meant to hurt you. All of that is true. And none of it changes what you experienced. None of it obligates you to anything. None of it means you have to prioritize their feelings over your own well-being. Their sadness is theirs to carry. Your healing is yours to protect. And whether those two processes ever intersect again is entirely your choice to make based on what serves you, not based on what would relieve their regret. You matter more than their comfort. Remember that.